Welcome. This is Gary Abbott of USA Wrestling. We're having a moments off the mat conversation with a number of athletes and leaders within the women's wrestling community. It's been a great time for women's college wrestling. If you pay attention to the news in wrestling, college wrestling on the NCAA level now has emerging sports status. And we're very close to having an official NCAA Women's Wrestling Championship. One of the areas, though, that needs more development clearly is the Division I level of wrestling, where there's only 2 programs at this point that have committed to varsity status. But that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of young women that go to college and train and compete in wrestling at Division I schools, but they are choosing and being involved in a different path. And a lot of the athletes that have figured out how to make wrestling and college work together, Division I level, are here on our call today. So I'm going to kick it over to Christine Cunningham, who wrestled at Stanford, is a graduate from that great institution, and she's going to kind of moderate our conversation. And I look forward myself to hearing the stories of what's going on campus for the women wrestlers at the Division I level, and what the possibilities will be in the future. So Christine, let her roll.
Thank you so much, Gary. I am so excited to be here today with some youthful faces who are just rocking it at the D1 level. I have the honor of being the token old lady former wrestler. Again, as Gary mentioned, I wrestled at Stanford in 2007 was my first year. I graduated in 2011, and all the way back then, you know, I really thought my career was going to end after high school. I knew I wanted to go to Stanford. I love their biology program. I love school so much. I'm still in school, finishing my PhD in biology. So I knew I wanted to go to Stanford, and I over there, even though Patricia Miranda, the great Patricia Miranda, had demonstrated it was possible with such success, I still didn't think that was a possibility for me. So it came down to really happenstance, me meeting the coach of Stanford, Kerry McCoy. He was the new coach there. I met him at Fargo my senior year, and he came up to me and said, I know you're applying to Stanford, and I think, you know, if you want to wrestle, if you're down, there's a space for you on our team. And I think it was that encouragement from Kerry McCoy, who's now heading up the regional training center in California. So he's an awesome women's wrestling advocate, but it was his encouragement that really got me to pursue wrestling at the D1 level. And over a decade later, unfortunately, it's still such a new kind of sphere, this women's wrestling merging with the D1 academic institution. And so I'm hoping that this conversation today with these all-star superstars will serve to, one, educate women wrestlers out there what the pathways are that you can pursue both wrestling at the D1 academic institution, and then 2, to serve as encouragement for the 27,000 girls who are currently wrestling in high schools across America. So you guys are that Kerry McCoy for me. So let's encourage the next generation. So let's start with some introductions. So just a brief minute intro from everyone, talking about what university you're at, why you chose that university, and some of your wrestling goals. And I picked an order already to stay on time. So let's start with Bree, if that's okay.
Yeah. Hi guys. My name is Bree Santos. I'm from Central Virginia. I'm a senior at Columbia University up in New York City. I'm studying political science and human rights, and I kind of fell into Columbia in a similar way. Growing up in Virginia, I had the opportunity to be coached by Sarah Fulfallen Bahura, who knew Jackie Davis, who's on this call, and we kind of—
And me.
Yeah. And yeah, the whole East Coast wrestling connections kind of brought me to competing at Columbia at the Gotham City Open when it was held there. And yeah, just kind of planting the seed. Jackie planted the seed, started making the calls, making the connections. I came in on Coach Tonelli's first day on the job, and yeah, we've made it work. I am not rostered on Columbia's team, but I have been competing for the RTC all 4 years with the help of Titan Mercury Wrestling Club. That has been, it's been an incredible experience, and it's brought me opportunities not just in the wrestling world, but also in the professional sphere and in the academic sphere that I never would have gotten. And I'm really grateful. And I feel graduating this year.
Well, that's a good group to join. That's the goal. We want everyone to graduate, but you can continue wrestling at the RTC, I'm sure, and continue your career, and we'll be following you closely. Let's hear from Marisol now, our recent champion.
Yeah, so I'm at Lehigh University right now. I'm a freshman. I was also lucky enough to have a lot of guidance throughout like my college process from Jackie Davis, who was at the time the Mass State Director for the women's group, which I was a member of, even though my ACL was torn. Jackie actually helped me look at a ton of different schools. You know, we checked out Columbia, we talked to a ton of different coaches. She was so helpful. I definitely would have had a really there's really not like a lot of guidance for girls right now trying to do that recruiting process, trying to make that connection with coaches. So Jackie was always quick to help connect me over like emails, over texts, like give me those resources so that, you know, I could feel out schools for myself, and that, you know, towards the end of the day, like I felt like I had a couple of options as of like where I want to go. And like, that's something I never thought I would have. So I'm at Lehigh. I'm an international relations and economics major, even though it doesn't really matter because I'm a freshman, so everything will change, I'm sure. I chose Lehigh just because I wrestled there for a national preps where I won a nat prep title, and I just thought that was a really cool experience. I really liked the Lehigh wrestling community. Like, I love people that are just so passionate about their sport, and I felt like it was a good blend of academics and athletics, and I felt like it was a good place to build something for women's wrestling.
Fantastic. And congratulations on your recent win. You just won a tournament during COVID, which is just an incredible feat in itself. So
Yep.
We're going to talk about that a little bit after as well. But we'll continue with introductions. Demetra.
Hi, I'm Demetra. I'm a current junior at Princeton. I'm from New York, Westchester, a bit north of New York City. I started wrestling in 7th grade, and I had a lot of injuries throughout high school. I've had 4 knee surgeries. So when I was looking at colleges, playing any sport was really not even a question for me. I just figured I would go for academics, and it wasn't really until halfway through my freshman year that I even considered playing a sport again. And so it kind of just fell into my lap being at a program that's so welcoming and enthusiastic about women's wrestling. And so I'm super grateful that I've ended up where I have, and I chose Princeton for the academics. I'm in environmental engineering and studying renewable energy, and that's really my passion and my priority most of the time. And so the fact that I can do both of these things simultaneously at Princeton is really amazing.
Yeah, well, you are amazing. That is so awesome. And I see your environmentally friendly fans running behind you. So you're practicing what you're preaching. That's great. Okay, let's hear from Melinda.
Hi everyone, I'm Melinda. I'm a sophomore at Harvard and I'm studying the history of science. I'm originally from Montreal, Canada, and I actually never wrestled before coming to Harvard, but in my freshman year, I was really lucky. I met Sandra and Jackie, who kind of introduced me, came to practice, had a great time, met lots of really friendly, really welcoming people, and really enjoyed learning something new. And I guess that's kind of one of the great things about Harvard. That's kind of what attracted me in the beginning, is you have just so many opportunities to try new things that you never thought that you'd come across in your lifetime. And so that's kind of been a great part of my experience. So I guess as someone who has very little wrestling experience, one of my like personal goals is just to learn as much as I can, and I'd love to be able to like compete at some point. But kind of greater than that, Jackie also introduced us to some of the work she was doing with younger wrestlers, and it was incredibly inspiring to see like how good they were and how committed they were, but then knowing that there wasn't this already existing college pathway for them. So a great goal of mine would be to kind of build that and leave that foundation for them so that they have access to greater opportunities when they are older and get to go to college.
That is so awesome. I commend you for taking up a new sport, a grueling sport like wrestling, no less, while balancing academics at Harvard. That is so awesome and inspiring, and I'm sure you will inspire lots of young girls who want to wrestle as well. Okay, and lastly, let's hear from Sandra.
Hi everyone, I'm Sandra. I'm currently a junior at Harvard studying biomedical engineering. I'm originally from San Antonio, Texas, and I wrestled during my senior year of high school because I needed a credit for like physical activity. And it just happened that my physics teacher was also the women's wrestling coach, and she just invited me on. I did not expect to continue wrestling at Harvard. I went there because of some of the people that I knew. I really loved like the student community. But then I started going to the wrestling matches for the men's team, and I became friends with some of the wrestlers there. And then one of them randomly asked me one day if I wanted to continue wrestling. And then that was where I got to meet Professor Elena Glossman, who's currently our faculty sponsor for the Women's Wrestling Club at Harvard. And from there on, we just began sending out an interest form to see if there are any ladies at Harvard who would be interested in wrestling. And we were able to find people like Melinda. I got introduced to Jackie. And so far, it's just been a really incredible experience, meeting all these ladies who are interested in wrestling for the first time while also taking on these really grueling studies. And I think it's been really amazing and touching to see all the support that we've been receiving from the wrestling community as well. I think personally, I might end up joining the old lady crew too before Harvard gets approved to actually compete, but it would be really amazing to just someday see a varsity team at all these D1 schools, and for all these women to be able to continue pursuing both studies and this wrestling sport.
That's so great. Thank you guys all for introducing yourselves. You are a spectacular group of women. I've had so much fun reading about your awesome accomplishments this week. So just touching on what we were just talking about a moment ago, it sounds like a lot of you guys actually had female wrestling teams in your high schools. Can you guys raise your hand if you had a female wrestling team in your high school? I just want to gauge this because, oh, so just one. Okay, so that's not, oh, that's so sad to see. I mean, that's how it was back when I was in high school years and years ago. So we need to step that up there. But then to see, okay, who has a club team at their university right now that's women's wrestling club? Okay, so 2 universities. We could do better. Let's get some clubs. Let's get some club teams at D1 academic institutions. Can Sandra and Melinda, you guys just started this club. You recruited people like Melinda who had never wrestled before. Tell us about that process. What was it like? You have a faculty advocate that's wonderful. How did it all come together? And how close are you guys with the men's wrestling program at Harvard?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I can start off. So yeah, it was because of like getting to know the men's wrestling team that I was able to find this opportunity. And so I got connected to Professor Elena Glossman, she was really passionate about this club. And I think I was initially a little concerned that there wouldn't be sufficient interest within the Harvard community, but we sent out like a sign-up form to all the mailing lists on campus. The men's wrestling team also helped promote it. And we ended up getting around 15 responses within the first month, which was really impressive. And so then we decided to set up a practice. So then I got to meet Jackie. We decided to just try and practice out a few moves in like the Harvard men's wrestling room. They were really gracious to let us borrow the space. And so I guess from there, like I was able to meet Melinda. We were able to meet some people who were just wanting to try it out for the first time. And Melinda, do you want to maybe like build off on like how we got more people?
Yeah, of course. So I went to that first practice with one of my other friends who Sandra also knew, and it was really encouraging to like have a buddy to go with to try something new, because otherwise I think I honestly might not have gone. But from there, I was also able to drag one of my entryway mates, so someone who lived like in the same dorm as me, to also come to practice. So at that point, we had like a core little group. And I think by the end of our first semester, we kind of decided to form a sort of leadership board and decide like what our next move should be, how we should establish this as a proper club. We got a lot of semester going in, we started kind of looking at what different application materials we need to do, because we had the whole Harvard recreation apparatus to work through, doing paperwork and stuff like that. But we just kept holding practices every week to keep people engaged, learning new things. We held a few social events, and then we just made sure we got all our paperwork in on time and everyone interested and had that all in. And then this year, I think I was a little nervous going in because of COVID and everyone being off campus. We weren't sure, if we were going to be able to keep interest up and get new freshmen in, but we actually did. We went to our school's kind of student activities fair, and we had a table there. We were sitting there for like, I think 2 or 3 hours. And we actually did get freshmen that stopped by and were interested, and I just got to talk and get to know them. And they actually just started showing up to practices and came every week. So it's been a really positive experience.
And then,
That's so
oh,
wonderful.
sorry. I was just
Oh,
going
no,
to
continue,
follow on your question about like how close are we to the men's team, but we've had several the entire club, like they were really welcoming to the idea of us, of them promoting the fact that we exist on their Instagram. Coach Wise has been so incredibly supportive of this club. Like he's let us borrow the mat room. He even gave us these t-shirts. The support at Harvard from the men's team has been brilliant. So yeah.
That's so wonderful to hear. And, it takes a village. It takes faculty support. It takes people like Jackie who are so involved in networking, connecting people. It takes you guys reaching out to your roommates, to other freshmen on campus. And then it also takes the men's teams that most of us actually hailed from, in high school, being that girl wrestler on your men's team. That was my case the whole time as well. It takes those people and those coaches to also champion the women's efforts. And so any men's wrestling coaches that are listening right now, it's up to you guys also, and we're counting on you to help us out in advancing women's wrestling. So please help us out. Okay, so let's talk about COVID. Marisol, you just had an awesome, what was it? You just won junior nationals, right? And it's during a COVID time. When COVID first became this huge pandemic, I immediately jumped to wrestling. I thought, what a scary time to be a wrestler. It's you can't get away from it. It's a contact sport. That's what we love about it. But how have you been keeping up with your training with COVID and at such a successful level?
I'm actually like super lucky. My dad owned a wrestling gym, like his own private one. So, once COVID started, I also have 4 younger siblings. One of them is actually a twin of mine who's the exact same weight as me. So I never really had like a shortage of partners. If I wanted to work out, we always had the opportunity to do so, which I was super excited about. I've also just been really lucky. I've always had like amazing drill partners to work with. When COVID first happened, Jackie Daney was someone that I was always able to work out with. I want to say she's a sophomore now in Massachusetts. Then, once I got on campus at Lehigh, things were a little stressful for a little bit just because campuses have so many restrictions right now. I know that's something like we're all kind of dealing with, can't get into like athletic facilities, can't really have the same access to trainers and like those types of resources. It makes it a little more difficult. But I was really lucky that I had Skylar Grote at the Lehigh Valley RTC with me, and she was kind of like my mentor, I guess. She was able to like take me on and, help me kind of like plan practices, make sure I was getting my workouts in. She was kind of like, I call her like my mom. She was kind of just managing me a little bit, making sure that I was doing what I needed to do, making sure that I was like feeling good about it too. That was really important, was like my mental state, and just making sure that, I felt confident enough to like go out and compete and that I could, be successful. So with COVID, like it was definitely a little more difficult. I had to bring my car down to campus so that I could drive to off-campus practices because they weren't allowing me in the athletic facility at the time. So there was like, there was small complications every now and then. Like even going to Nebraska, the schools are very not fond of that idea of just leaving and going somewhere for the weekend. They hate that. So, I had to be pretty wise about, when I left campus, when I went to practices, like just trying to figure it out with the COVID guidelines, also like making sure that, I didn't get COVID. So there was like a bunch of like little complications, but I think at the end of the day, it's just like, like we're wrestlers, we want to wrestle, so we find a way to make it happen. So
that is such a wrestler mentality. I think that especially women wrestling, you've overcome so many hurdles and obstacles to get where you are. Every day is an obstacle. Every takedown is an obstacle standing in front of you. So you're so used to conquering these lofty obstacles. And so I'm not surprised that a wrestler can figure out a way to win a championship during a COVID time. That's awesome. Okay, so I heard a little bit we've heard about clubs at universities, and then you mentioned the regional training center that you had been working out with some people, practice partners there. I want to hear a little bit more about that route. So Bree, you are a senior at Columbia. You've been working with the regional training center in your area, and you've had great success there. Your freshman year, I believe you were on the junior national team and were a superstar. And so can you tell us a little bit about your career path and seeing over the 4 years that you've been at Columbia, how the women's wrestling has changed there, and also the role of the RTC in your success? And finally, I know this is a big question, but how are you able to manage being on the junior national team while managing your academic success?
Yeah, that's kind of the story of the last 4 years. I think it might also be important to preface that I had a really incredible experience right before I came. It was right after I got my acceptance to Columbia, but right before I came on campus, I spent 8 months at the Olympic Training Center, now the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. So that kind of shaped how I looked at training, how I looked at the sport of wrestling completely differently before I walked onto campus. Our RTC has kind of been, it's been a super collaborative effort because it's the Columbia guys, it's also Stevens Institute in Hoboken, it's the RTC specific coaches, which are Valentine, Klika, and Kendall Cross, and also just kind of getting all the girls in the area that we can. So over the last 4 years, we've kind of switched up my training situation when we needed to. There have been times where I've been in the Columbia practices. There have been times when we've been in like collaborative practices. There have been times when I've just been doing one-on-ones with, I forgot, Elena. We've also had, when I first got there, Helen Maroulis was training with us, and Elena Pirishkova has been in the area this whole time. She's now a coach at NJCU. So yeah, just having that group of mentors and coaches from different partners. I think the name of the game has been being flexible between trying to figure out your obligations for national team, especially when you're trying to figure out camps, you're trying to figure out competitions. I remember one time in particular, my freshman year, I went to U23 World Team Trials in Oklahoma City, and I was in an econ class, and the econ professor moved the midterm date to while I was in Oklahoma City, and it ended up being a really big learning lesson about how to make those obligations known to your professors, how to navigate the bureaucracy of the school and get that done. Unfortunately, that time it didn't work out well for me, but going forward, I've known to make sure I email my professors at the beginning of the semester with, these are the dates I think I'm going to be gone. Try and build that rapport and like manage expectations. I think, yeah. The other thing has been like just trying to keep your energy up and keep motivated, and that's really about the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah, well, it seems like you all have had a really nice network. If you're willing to reach out for it, there is someone in your area that you can meet, that you can connect with. Maybe we don't all have a twin, that's our body weights that we can wrestle in our own house, but there's someone around that is willing to be a practice partner and could be a really good resource for you. You just have to be willing to look for it and hunt for it. And I think that people like Jackie, people like Kira Barry that we talked to earlier, I think they're really great resources in connecting all these incredible women at the collegiate level to each other. So, okay, now I want to hear from Dimitra. You had so many knee surgeries that broke my heart because I've had 2 knee surgeries as well, and that's why my career ended. Although after this conversation, I might have an encore. No, hopefully not. But I want to hear about how you were able to transition back into wrestling after you were at Princeton. I feel like that would be a hard jump to make after so many injuries, and especially at such a grueling institution, again, adding another layer of difficulty to your life and complexity. And then I also want to hear about, maybe you could talk to people who have been injured or who haven't wrestled before or are thinking about getting back into it. How did you like make that transition, and how easy was it or how difficult was it for you, and what helped?
Yeah, so logistically, what happened, it was a lot of lucky coincidences. I ended up at Princeton and was not even, at that point I was recovering from a third knee surgery that I'd had toward the end of my senior year of high school. And when I got to Princeton, I was not even thinking about sports. So much was new. I was getting used to my classes, getting used to meeting new people. And it was only really in around December or January of my freshman year, I realized that I was getting a bit antsy. It was really the first time in my life where I had no prospect of doing anything besides academics. And as much as I love school and I love learning, you need balance. My grandfather used to always say to me, sound mind and a sound body. And I definitely live by that. And I felt like I was missing the sound body part of it. And then one of my friends was super lucky. She was the reporter for the men's team. And so after all the matches, she would be talking to the players, talking to the coaches. And then just one day, head coach Chris Ayers was looking for a training partner for his daughter. And he just asked her if she knew any female wrestlers at Princeton. And she happened to know me. So she let me know. And at that point, when I knew that there was even the smallest possibility and it had been lingering in the back of my mind, I couldn't say no to an opportunity like that. So I met with Coach Ayers and I started wrestling at the RTC just a couple times a week, easing my way back in because it had been a while. And then eventually summer went by. I wound up hurting my knee that summer and I had a fourth knee surgery. But then I came back the following fall and I was wrestling at the RTC and I was wrestling with Chloe Ayers, who's an amazing partner. But I was looking for a more rigorous training schedule just because she was on a high school schedule. She was about to go back and be with her high school team. And I wasn't really going to have partners and I wasn't going to have, someone holding me to going to all these practices, which is really tough, especially when my priority has always been academics. So I wound up at that point, speaking to Coach Ayers about it, and I wound up rostering with the men's team. So continued going to all of their lifts and all of their practices, which was a lot easier to coordinate. And the team and the coaches have all been so welcoming there. And so I'm super lucky for that. And in so many ways, a lot of things went right for me being at Princeton, having Chloe Ayers, who's around my weight, having a coach who was looking for a female wrestler before I even thought about it. That's super lucky. But in so many ways, so much went wrong. There's very few athletes out there who get to go 4 years without competing and then, continue to pick up their sport again. And that's just so lucky for me. And so, it really goes to show, I think that that story and the story of everyone on here just really shows that if you want to make it happen at any place in the world, there's a lot of different pathways, a lot of different ways to make it happen. And you can do that. And whether it's injuries or inexperience or anything holding you back, wrestling is a sport that conditions grit and perseverance. And because of that, every female wrestler has the tools to really make it happen where they want to.
I love that. I can't believe, I stopped after 2 knee surgeries. I can't believe you are continuing to wrestle, but my hat's off to you. You are awesome. And I think that shows, that's kind of the theme of this, is that where there's a will, there's a way, and especially for wrestlers, because like you said, we have that grit. We are conditioned to have that grit. And you all demonstrate that it's possible to manage your academics with your wrestling. So that shouldn't be a worry for those bright young high school wrestlers out there. You can do it. It's possible. And I agree with what you said about the sound mind, sound body. I know that the years that I wasn't wrestling, even in high school, when I had my first knee surgery and I couldn't wrestle, I actually probably did worse in classes because I was used to that regimen, right? And I know I see some head shaking. You're used to that regimen. As a wrestler, scheduling all your time out, you're thinking about your food, your sleep, your training regimen. And so I think that the school just kind of, not effortlessly, but it just gets enveloped in that regimen, and it makes for a super scholar athlete. And I think that, and so it's really conducive to that. So I think that it's definitely possible. You guys are living proof of that. And you just need, there are opportunities out there for every female wrestler. You just need to reach for them, and don't be afraid to ask. So I know that in my case, there was a female wrestler, Jolene, who was older than me, and she was at Stanford, and she wanted to wrestle and talk to the men's coach and rostered, or tried to roster with the team for a little bit. And it was really, really difficult to kind of like blaze that trail and go ahead. And then when I came up a few years later, I think 2 years later, she saw that there was another girl on the team and joined back up again, and she kicked everyone's butt in that room. She was the fastest woman I've ever seen in my life. She kept us all on our toes, and I needed to be pushed on my toes, especially. I'm not a great runner, so the cross training conditioning was always tough for me. So even though she is like half my weight and size, so we weren't the best like physical training partner, she motivated me to cross train more than I'd ever cross trained before. And on your club team, your RTC, or your rostering on a men's program at your university, you guys are setting the stage for the next female to feel comfortable to join that club or that team or whatnot. So I encourage you guys to keep reaching out. I know I saw you guys on the D1 Women's Wrestling Instagram. You guys did a takeover, I think, last week, and that was really cool to see you guys out there and hear your stories and get into your lives. So I encourage you guys to keep doing that. You guys are so awesome, and you are going to motivate other women to go down the same path as you. So do you guys, anyone can jump in here. I'm looking at time now. Does anyone have any last advice that they'd want to give to a high school female or girl who's wrestling right now, or even a former wrestler at a college institution that isn't rostered and wants to get back into wrestling, or someone who's never wrestled before? What's some last advice? Anyone can just chat. Open up the stage.
My biggest piece of advice, I guess, to girls looking to go to like wrestling college right now, is just to like take advantage of everything. That was my biggest problem, was I was so afraid to email coaches. I was so afraid that they would ignore me, or they wouldn't want me, or I wouldn't be like good enough to wrestle at their university. And that was almost never the case. And that always surprised me, is like, I think like 95% of the time, like coaches would always email me back, but it took me so long just to press that send button because I was so afraid. I remember even like emailing the Columbia coach. I think I waited 2 to 3 days to send it because I reread it like 50 times. I was like, I need to sound smart. I need to sound like I'm good at wrestling. Like, I really think that like girls just need to know that like coaches are willing to help you. It's really like you just have to reach out to them. And that's something that I wish I knew more when I was looking at colleges, because I think I definitely was, me being afraid of being like rejected, like definitely limited myself a little bit. So.
Absolutely. I think that's amazing advice. Reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. And that's so funny. How do you sound like you're good at wrestling in an email? Don't spend time thinking about that. It's really hard to sound like you're good at wrestling in an email. Just do it. Send the email.
I had a question for Jackie, who is working with some of the women on the call. And also, you had a college girls wrestling team, and you're seeing these young women creating new opportunities out east where you're a leader in women's wrestling. What are your thoughts about what you've heard from their stories, and how can this help other people even make it better for the next generation?
Well, these young women on this call are super inspirational. I feel so. Not on this call are Kira Berry and Lori Ayers, who are 2 other women that I work closely with on D1 women's wrestling initiatives. But I think, and I'm probably shouldn't speak for them, but I think I'm going to speak for them, is we, all 3 of us, wake up every morning and go, okay, what can we do to help support these women? Immediately when we wake up, what can we do to help support these women continue on their journey, as well as amplify the message. What they're doing is possible. Couldn't say it better than what Marisol just said, that 95% of coaches, maybe even higher, really want to support these women. But they don't know who these women are, so don't be afraid to reach out. And also, every institution is different. So just because it works one way at one school doesn't mean it's going to work the same way at another, and that's okay. Again, can't say it better than Bree. Flexibility is so important. You know, where there's a will, there's a way, but be understanding that a lot of this is going to be building it as you go, and that sometimes the pathway is gonna split, and you might have to say bye to one and go a different route, and be okay with that, because it's still gonna find progress for you. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, Gary, but I guess these women are awesome. And so even if you're not reaching out to a college coach, or you're not reaching out to a Lori Ayres or a Kira Berry or me or a Christine, reach out to these women, because they're living it every day, and they can certainly help you as well.
That was so well said. Thank you. Well, I had such a great time moderating this today. It was a surprise to me, a really happy surprise. And as you can tell from this dorky smile on my face, it is so exciting for me to talk to female wrestlers again. And so, Gary, thank you for letting us have this opportunity today to have an off the mat talk. I'll wait for you to close everything out.
Well, thank you. This has been a lot of fun for me, and clearly this is something I think others can learn from. We're going to make it our Women's Wednesday feature on themat.com at USA Wrestling, and turn it into a Moments Off the Mat video for our YouTube channel. And, you know, certainly encourage people to keep spreading the great word that there's opportunities for women in wrestling. It's going to get better and better as we go, but this is a group of pioneers at the institutions they're in, and you know, years from now, people are going to thank you for what you're doing, and all you want to do is wrestle, right? So look forward to seeing how things go for you as you continue your journey in wrestling, and thank you for stepping up and sharing your stories. So with that said, I want to wish everyone a great holiday season, and stay safe and keep the faith.